Good morning, everyone. We are students of 4th year BArch presenting our urban design project. Our topic for this studio is open spaces and the city. This is a study into our understanding of open spaces in the city and how they can be revitalized to create a better human environment. This study pertains to the case of Shalimar Precinct. Open spaces are spaces which rupture the urban fabric of a city. These are spaces which are often neglected or either forgotten spaces for the people of the city. This is the result of improper planning of buildings without paying any heed to context or the neighboring buildings themselves. This has created multiple tapped spaces that cannot be used or have become a burden on the context. Our approach is to identify and study these spaces in order to understand them and attempt to revitalize them, making these spaces a part of the city. This enables us to improve the coexistence of humans with the environment. These are the large open spaces in Nasik city: the riverfront, the Shivaji Stadium, the police parade ground, the golf club, and the Dongre Vasti Gruha Maidan. Of these, we are working on the Shivaji Stadium precinct. The site is located in the heart of Nasik city. The area starts from Beher Signal to Sardar Vinsurkar Chowk across till the main road. The site is chosen because of its central location and the distinct characters of built forms in and around it. It serves as an amalgamation of the past, the present, and the future evolution of Nasik. These areas have the heaviest footfall in the city, owing to multiple factors like the central bus stand, multiple hospitals, sports stadiums, public schools, district court, the collectorate, the Zilla Parishad, and so on. It is also the main commercial hub of the city and was once the main transit routes between important cities. This region has undergone various changes throughout its hundreds of years in existence and has a huge untapped potential to become the central open space for a city level interaction. The map denotes the extent of several green and open spaces in the selected site. Some of these green areas are trapped buildings or minimum accessibility and visibility. The possibility of aggregating these spaces in the core of the city provides us with a very unique opportunity to serve the public realm. Of the total 73 acres on the site, only about 20% of the site is covered in greenscapes. This study allows us to understand how the different types of open spaces exist and how they can be treated to serve the public realm. The open spaces in consideration are the land in front of the court premises, the Shivaji Stadium, the land in front of the collectorate, Nehru Garden, Red Cross Signal, Main Road area, Regional Super Specialty Hospital premises, the Shalimar Chowk, Shivaji Garden, Ambedkar Chowk Cemetery, Kalidas Parking, the HRD Center. Our objective was to define the open space in context with the urban fabric and understand how these spaces interact with each other and the people. After locating these spaces, we've tried to understand the potential each of them hold. The site is an amalgamation of various layers of activities, right from administrative buildings to sports stadiums and institutes. These buildings have a great heritage value with regards to the history of the city, right from structures To the functional activities, one can observe cultural influence present in the site's context. The Zilla Parishad Road is host to multiple activities throughout its length. We have the General Post Office, the Zilla Parishad itself, and a few cultural activities that involve Kalidas Kala Mandir, Mahatma Phule Kala Dalan, and the Shivaji Park. This area also has a greater concentration of hospitals and residential clusters. The first major street of Nasik, the main road, now has become a shopping area. The street is used by people from the city and surrounding villages. The entire street has commercials on the ground and residential above. Most of these buildings today have significant heritage value. Conducting the physical documentation was necessary to understand the scale of humans and the street in reference to the urban built forms.
The urban pattern of a city is made up of many different layers, and to understand the site, a thorough study has been done with the following attributes. Evolution of a city plays an important role in determining the factors that led to the growth of the city. Tradition, art, culture, and modern industries have made a deep impact on Nasik. During the era of Peshwas, in 1751, the main bazaar road was the central core area. Post-Peshwa rule, city came under the British rule in 1818. Due to the prior existence and heavy usage of Old Agra Highway, CBS bus stand came into the picture. British shifted their administration core away from central area, and hence the boundary of the city extended with establishment of district court and collector's office. Initially, central major land parcel of the city was owned by Raja Bahadur. Later it was lent to the government and it got divided by paving of Tilak Road and Shivaji Road to connect the old city with central bus stand. Britishers established important structures like High School, Gymkhana, Home Guard Office, and the Golf Club, which showcased colonial architectural style. Owing to the district court, a lawyers' colony was formed on Mahatma Gandhi Road, which was later developed as a commercial complex in 1980. Nehru Garden and Shivaji Garden became the attraction point for the visitors. In 1987, Kalidas Kala Mandir was built, which became the central recreation hub close to Zilla Parishad, CBS, and court buildings. With the establishment of prominent structures, residential and commercial activities started coming up in and around these hotspots. The growth of commercial establishments with time is observed in privately owned shops and municipal markets. Sociocultural layer in community mapping helps us to understand the evolution of a city. It explains the character and nature of their use in urban space. As people form communities, which leads to different socio-cultural aspects to form urban comfort. In case of existing scenario, formation of communities tells us about the change in character. The layers of urban fabric are religion, architecture, economics, and politics. To study all the layers, social gathering helps in interaction among diversity of individuals of all abilities in large, medium, and small groups for social and community purposes. Religious gatherings helps us to identify the significance of community cohesion around which many urban residents' lives revolve. Religious architecture in cultural heritage constitutes a unique role as it is visible for a long time, witnessing the historic events. It forms communities and shows similar characteristics. Changing character of the streets during festive season is observed. This needs creation of a large gathering space in the city. Institution gathering mostly show medium groups of interactions. It provides flexible gathering spaces. As these gathering spaces are interdependent, they boost the economic development of the city while acting as a landmark. The map helps us to understand the location of eateries that are at a rise around the economically influential areas of the city. They are interdependent to all layers of socio-cultural aspects. Major food vendors are at nodal junctions which allow small level gathering spaces. Economic factors influence the migration of people and the development of a region. Along with the emergence of Mumbai-Agra highway, administrative buildings developed around the major roads, which gave the cities a district level dominance. It boasted various primary and secondary recreational activities like transportation, hotels, and entertainment emerging along the edge. Major traffic flow increased on connecting roads, which resulted in demand for land parcel of commercial activities. Increase in importance of land parcel resulted in increased land value. This gave rise to the growth of the city towards the west. Extension of city gave rise to various city-level activities which had started evolving around newly developed areas. Nasik Municipal Corporation was established along a major axis which connected CBS and Nasik Road. Nodes became important street edge element and various activities started developing along the primary street. This gave rise to commercial development. On primary roads, commercial development started which further influenced secondary and tertiary activities. This had major impact on the development of economy to the city. In the new development phase, there are a few occupation categories which connected the city with adjoining areas. Administrative and industrial areas were connected at district level. This gave work opportunities for people. Migration rates shot up and hence public facilities like transportation and parks started developing. Initially, farming was an important activity, hence settlement of farmers could be seen on the outskirts of the city. The interdependency of farming and commercials is seen which later contributed to the economical growth. Commercial and manufacturing aspects are the main influencing categories for economic development. Old core and the new development of the city showcase different functions. This cycle portrays how intercity linkages are formed due to commerce. Initially, manufacturing and selling of products both took place in the old core market. This is how different areas interlinked to the old core, which impacted the economic development. The map displays the developed occupational categories along the side. Each category is developed in zones according to the functional interdependency, that is primary, secondary, and tertiary. From riverside to market spaces to private enterprises, there is a shift of commercial activities from old core to the new city. Spread of cities towards the west was due to constant flooding of the river. New developed roads hosted main commercial zones at the edges, which helped in boosting the economy. In the evolution of industrial zone, technological development gave rise to industrial districts within the city, leading to decentralization of it. Climate, availability of water and power, land location and development. These are main reasons for starting new industries in the city. Connection between cities resulted in development of dependent activities along the road, that is petrol pump, auto garage, workshop and cycle modes. Primary transports started developing along the edges. Commercial district was formed at Ravivar Karanja in the old core of Nasik. The travel pattern for shopping is governed by purchasing power, travel distance, varieties and means of transport. These factors govern the development of two commercial areas. This junction is the main connecting junction for the retail and wholesale area. Understanding mobility networks show and highlight area of prominence. The map shows all primary, secondary, and tertiary roads of site. According to the hierarchy, width of roads also varies. There is an interconnection between all these roads. In Old Nasik, building determines the road, but in new development, road patterns determine the position of the building. The main road is the first highway, and later Old Mumbai-Agra Road emerged, which became the major link between the old city and new city. Administrative buildings and commercial complex started coming up around the primary road. The emergence of the old Mumbai-Agra highway had a major impact on city development. Along with the road came a major transportation hub, that is CBS, with petrol pumps and auto garages. Major traffic flow is on primary roads. Increasing traffic flow raised the need for technological advancement such as traffic signals, bus stops, and CCTV cameras. The map shows the bus route connecting the city and a future metro route. Along the bus route, taxi and auto rickshaw stands emerged. This gave a boost to various secondary and tertiary activities. Circle shows the walkable distance of 10 minutes marked from two major transport hubs, CBS and Shalimar. CBS connects to administrative buildings, schools, entertainment, and cultural district, whereas Shalimar connects schools, commercial zones, and the old core of the city. The emergence of roads and an increase in traffic flow gave rise to the formation of nodes and informal activities along the edges. Thus, the footfall increased. These nodes signify the density of movement and circulation load. Every node is different from each other in sense of network connection, the volume of traffic load, activities, etc. Activities around nodes and traffic circulation collides with each other. Spillover of activities around nodes and road edges during festivals cause overcrowding which disturbs traffic flow. In Old Nasik, Sarkarwada was the first administrative building in the Peshwa period. Later, a new administrative block was introduced by the British Raj connected to the old Agra highway. Around this block, interdependent development started taking place like CBS, lawyers' chamber, print and rubber stamp shops, etc. India got independence from British, but the influence of their architecture was still followed. Prior British period, the concept of shared walls was present in which ventilation was taken care through courtyard. British introduced marginal spaces around the structures. The decision of giving foreground to structure is followed till now, which shows the importance of building. Developing city raised the need for new highway. So new Mumbai-Agra highway was introduced outside the city. The whole land parcel was open and was under the ownership of Raje Bahadur. Commercial development occurred on plots around the roads to attract customers. Later, whole chunk of land got converted into commercials by which many secondary streets came into picture. As spoken earlier, Shivaji Ground was physically and visually open from periphery, but political decisions were taken and it got trapped because of commercialization of the street edge. Similarly, the ground dedicated for B.D. Bhalikar School has been converted into pay and park.
Mapping of the site is essential to understand aspects like age of the building or the area which can be used as public realm. The understanding of built versus unbuilt spaces help us to define the expanse of urban spaces, its scale, approach, and thus its usability. The figure ground study reveals the degree of contrast between the large and small building footprints. From this study, solids are represented by the built form, whereas voids are represented by unbuilt and open to the public. This mapping is giving an identification of old and new city, where the old city structure share common wall and new developed structure share boundary walls. Knowledge plan is a figure and ground diagram which tells us about the connection between public and private space. Land coverage of building is visualized as solid mass and public spaces are represented as void. It also gives an idea of scale and footprint of buildings according to its usage. Within a city, it requires proper zoning pattern in relation to the function desired within the vicinity. Land use mapping refers to the manner of utilization of land, including its allocation and development. The study of land use pattern will help in a balanced distribution of different land uses in the newer developments. It shows the non-uniform distribution of activities in the site. The building age mapping allows us to assess the age of the building and identifying whether within each precinct a building can be identified as heritage or not. Also helps in understanding the evolution of the sites. How activities that happens on the site have influenced the growth of the site. Building condition mapping is necessary to identify scope for urban design interventions for betterment, especially for the old city. This also helps in introducing the adaptive reuse strategies to the building. In the urban transformation projects, this is the best tool to document the built form and in turn contributes to the character of the street, open space, or city. Mapping of the building heights is giving an idea of the scale and volumetric perception to these urban spaces, streets, open spaces, etc. The relation of building height to street width lend a character to the urban spaces, making it intimate, or monumental.
After collecting all this data, it was essential to understand how to use the data. So we studied 8 authors which would help us achieve the same. Our first author is Jan Gehl. Jan Gehl has an extraordinary vision where he talks about the city should be given back to the people. He states that currently the infrastructure is concentrated towards automobiles, which does not cater to a healthy city. His vision is to create a realm where pedestrians can walk safely. In our site, we can observe spaces which denotes Jan Gehl's perspective. In the new buildings, because of the increased number of floors, one cannot make contact with the ground easily, which hampers the mental and emotional connection of the people in the community. These issues can be solved by creating a common space for everyone to enjoy it. Our second author is Kevin Lynch. Lynch's famous work, The Image of the City, is the result of a 5-year study on how observers take information of the city. The aim of this theory is to understand the relation between city image and the observer. The understanding of this is that city is to be held legible through sensory cues. Its image has to be perceived by the observer. Legibility and imageability would then lead to the identification of a structure and therefore a precise identity, due to which it will be possible to analyze a city and its own elements. Every observer perceives an image of the city which they remember. For that, it is important that city is legible and imageability. And for imageability, user understands their surrounding in consistent and predictable way and form a mental image of it with 5 key elements, that is, path, to provide a channel to travel, district, for identifying character, edges, to break boundaries and linear continuity, landmark, to provide a orientation and memorable location, nodes, a strategy spot for intensive focus to and from. Our third author is Colin Rao. Colin Rao, in his book Collage City, tried to reflect on the ongoing discussion by analyzing the two radical opposite models for urban utopias that existed at that time. The book gives a critical reappraisal of contemporary theories of urban planning and design and of the role of architect planner in an urban context. The author, rejecting the grand utopian visions of planning and design, proposes instead a collage city which can accommodate a whole range of utopias in miniature. The author talks about multiple ideas of amalgamation of distinct spaces and entities that end up syncing well with each other, creating a homogeneity of spaces from heterogeneity. Museum City, where things have lost relevance and it's necessary to make spaces that remain memorable to the user. Our fourth author is Gordon Cullen. According to Gordon Cullen, townscape is a visual art contained in the arrangement of buildings, roads, trees, nature, and urban environment that decorate the space. The townscape is one way that can be used in terms of physical visual to recognize the physical form of a city. According to author, the value should be added in the urban design of the city so that people can emotionally enjoy a good urban environment through psychological and physical sense. According to author, serial vision can be explained as the visual images captured by an observer while walking from one place to another. A human eye captures the image and breaks into pieces which gradually forms an integral image recording area for them. Typically, there will be similarities or a marker of a pieces that gives certainty to the observer that he was still in the same region. Content depends on two factors, namely the level of conformity and the level of creativity. Our fifth author is Aldo Rossi. The book, The Architecture of the City, gives a glance of architecture with respect to the city as a meaning of collective life, history, and reality, instead of a functional aspect. Rossi's urban theories explain about evolution of city, city as an artifact, primary elements as fixed activities, type over form and function, collective memory, emphasis on the collective, the public realm, continuity and permanence, concept of space, analogous city. Sketches explain the evolution of the city from the old core towards the west. Urban morphology includes all of those areas of the main road that have physical and social homogeneity. City possesses a center which is more or less complex and thus has a different characteristics. Tertiary activities are concentrated in this center. Historical elements around Main Road and District Court can be seen as masterpieces that sustained in form of space and understood with time. District Court, Kalidas, Main Road, CVS, schools, hospitals, etc. exist as fixed activity, which are primary element in city that have power to accelerate or retard urban process. Urban tends to be divided according to three principal functions: housing, fixed activities, and circulations. Our sixth author is Edmund Bacon. In his book Designing of Cities, Edmund Bacon talks about the interrelation of masses and space and awareness of space as a conscious expression. He says a form is determined by the multiplicity of decisions made by the people who live in it. Articulation of space is to produce a definite space experience in the relation to previous and anticipated space experiences. Architectural form, textures, materials, modulation of light and shade, color, all to inject a quality or spirit that articulates space. He quotes, the more density, the more walkability, more energy, more opportunities, more job. That's my starting point of a successful city. Further looking towards the site, through understanding the writing of the author, he believed that spare geometry of a building makes disregarded for the vitality of the street, providing pedestrianism and moving sidewalks, giving the street a valuable street public space. The form of the spaces were determined by the people who live in it, with context of the surrounding activities. Correlation happening from point A to point B. Our seventh author is Rasim Badran. Narrative on People and Place. Book unravels various layers of history and memory and talks about the non-Western language based on relevant religious, social, and cultural precedents. Further, the author talks about how the present seems to become the past more quickly than ever before and increasingly irrelevant. The author strongly believes building in the past with complex spatial relationships is more compelling and memorable than modern buildings. He contradicts that the individual identity is no longer connected to tradition, social interaction, or a place. Image shows the everyday activity which tells more about the true nature of the society. Below image indicates spaces and structure which have become irrelevant according to changing activities as time passes. For example, Open spaces are trapped by the commercials. Our eighth author is Rob Creer. The aim of his book, Urban Space, is to search how the traditional understanding of urban space has been lost within the modern cities. By explaining the terms of urban space and its structure, he has examined whether the concept of urban space retains some validity in contemporary town planning and on what grounds. The term urban space can be simply described as external space in town. It is seen as open, unobstructed space for movement in the open air with public, semi-public, and private zones. The spaces are the concept, which is completely or partially surrounded by buildings. Square is produced by the grouping of houses around an open space, and street is a product of that spread of a settlement once houses have been built alongside that available space. The more precise, three-dimensional quality of a building is expressed on each facade. The differentiation of scale plays an enormous role in all spatial forms, such as the effect of various architectural styles on an urban space.
To understand the site's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, analysis has been done so as to identify the issues and to provide solutions for the same. For the study, correlation and interdependency between all the primary, secondary, and tertiary activities has been studied, like hospital and fruit vendors, Nehru Garden and food stalls, Vakilwadi and Xerox shops, etc. Strengths of the overall site are: site is accessible and approachable from all directions. There is an availability of a lot of open space. Bustling commerce hub at different locations like Shalimar, Main Road, Shivaji Road, etc. generates a high revenue for the entire city. The site is well connected to the entire city via buses, rickshaw, and taxis as the main transportation hub is nearby. Weaknesses of the site are: vehicular activity is consuming more space than that of pedestrian movement. The road traffic creates a chaotic and noisy atmosphere. There are very less recreational spaces throughout the site for the public realm. There is a lack of homogeneity in the spaces. Opportunities of the overall site are: there are many identified open spaces which can be used for multifunctional activities. The open ground can be provided for all schools and colleges in the vicinity. It can provide a highlighted entrance to the open space which will give a visual access and spillover space. Threats of the site are: there is an availability of large open space, but it is dedicated to a single activity, making it an exclusive space. It has lost all the connection between Kalidas and the Shivaji Stadium because of commercials. Cultural activities have lost relevance as the nature has been changed. Talking about the schools and the Shivaji Stadium, the SWOT is as follows. Strengths are: all schools and sports related activities are in close vicinity. There is an availability of large open space. There is an important intra-city transportation hub, CBS, which is nearby. Weaknesses are: instead of having need of recreational spaces for school, there is no recreational space at all. There is lack of accessibility to the sports complexes and the open grounds. There is a lack of homogeneity in the entire area. There are no highlighted entrances to the open ground as the importance of the ground is not known. As entrances of some schools are on the main primary road, there is no spillover space which creates a lot of traffic on the road. Opportunities are: one big open space can be used for multifunctional activities. Common open ground can be provided for all schools and colleges in the vicinity, creating a homogeneous environment by retaining the character. Threats are: there is an availability of large open space, but it is dedicated to a single activity. Shivaji Stadium, Yashwantrao Vyayamshala, Nashik Gymkhana all have an individual identity and are all exclusive spaces. Talking about the district court, entertainment amenities, and the public library, strengths are: court and related activities like lawyers' chambers, Xerox, and stationaries are in close vicinity. Library and bookstores share a close space with the court and the many schools. Intracity transportation hub is close to all these spaces. Weaknesses are a need for refreshing and recreational spaces in court premises is needed. A lack in structural homogeneity is clearly visible. A lack in ancillary spaces is observed. Whereas the opportunities are the big open space can be used for multifunctional activities, creating a homogeneous environment through retaining the character of the buildings, clubbing court-related activities and library in one premise. Threats are loss of footfall near the library, development of unused spaces in the open area, and creation of an uninviting space for the public realm. The strengths for the hospitals are the activities on the main road drive people to these institutional buildings. The street scale is humane. Some structures stand uniquely, making them easier to identify and mark as landmarks. Weaknesses are lack of open spaces, lack of social spaces for the residents living around the area, lack of gateway or area definition treatment. The opportunities are if open space is provided with primary activities, the secondary and tertiary could be indulged with the same. Abandoned and dilapidated structures can be reused or converted to open spaces. The retainment of the character of structures is essential. Threats being the street width is not sufficient with respect to multiple activities in progression in the area. Vehicular movement is hampering the pedestrian movement on the main road, and lack of pedestrian involvement is observed. The Zilla Parishad establishes a predefined cultural relevance and a green corridor which is available as the HRD center land. Availability of large open spaces are distinctive throughout the area. Weaknesses are there is no defined land use. Internal access roads create bottlenecks due to insufficient street width. Shivaji Park does not have a defined character. Opportunities being land use can be redefined to accommodate, cultural relevance can be highlighted, sustainable open space can be developed. Threats are unplanned land use patterns and unplanned development, excessive surface parking, and clashing of vehicular and pedestrian movements. As for the Kalidas Kalamandir, the nearby public transport is beneficial for use. It has a proper parking space and is accessible by the location. Weaknesses being no eateries can be seen except the canteen around the vicinity. Shivaji Park, which is beneficial for the Kalidas, is not in use because it is on the backside of Kalidas, due to which we can see a reduced footfall. The opportunities being it can have multiple eateries, a proper use for the Shivaji Park, and it can also be converted into a public exhibition area. The threats being it lacks a lot of multi-use spaces, cultural activities which happen in the Kalidas Kala Mandir have lost relevance, and it is visible only from the front side.
The structure plan shows the policies and design intervention we have planned to cater the idea of integrating the entire area into one. The interventions are major changes to the built form and public spaces we think can be achieved to revitalize all the green spaces in the precinct and in order to allow for a better urban environment. The first intervention was the integration of built forms to revitalize them and bring functional homogeneity. Campus creation, which strengthens on the idea of creation of homogeneous environment. Plaza became the essence of public life and hence should be flexible to cater to ever-changing needs of the public. Transport nodes have been redefined, eliminating certain streets to make way for pedestrian avenues. This is done while strengthening existing network. This also creates a boundary to the open space. Reconfiguration of some streets into pedestrianing zones allows creation of one large open space in the heart of the site. Activities that promote social gathering and provide for such spaces have been planned. Entrances to the open spaces are reminiscent of the gates of Old Nashik and are to be celebrated. Multi-activity spaces that can be reconfigured as required. Creation of one culture district to bring relevance and homogeneity to the campus. creation of pause points along pedestrian paths to improve the walkability experience, reorganizing and rejuvenation of activities along street edge without hampering the pedestrian realm. Serial Vision connected by a series of plazas, enriching shopping experience at Main Road. Introduction of architectural elements to promote public interaction. Celebrated entrances to highlight the importance of the open space along with reorganizing roadside eateries, linking multiple spaces, emphasizing on pedestrian movement over mobility. Main Road has been pedestrianized completely to promote social interaction and boost business opportunities. Introduction of hotel at an important junction to bank on the opportunities created by open spaces in the city and its proximity to the river. Nodal junction that themselves serves as swells of pedestrian activities. Landmark creation to the bank on the idea of memory associated with the space. These are some of the micro-level strategies and intervention which we plan to promote and enrich pedestrian experience. These strategies were incorporated and taken further for interventions in the proposal of master plan.
Presenting our proposed master plan. The highlighted urban built masses have been introduced by merging, relocating, or intervening new urban built forms. Buildings have been restricted to 80 meters from street edge on main streets and 50 meters on secondary streets to prevent urban encroachment in the central open space. To achieve that, a tram service track has been introduced, which connects all the nodes within that space. The central open space serves the entire site, acting as a spillover for all activities happening around. The nodes as used as an entrance to the open space with introducing various activities at the node. All the nodes are within 5-minute walking distances of one another, and the extreme edges of the sites are within 15 minutes of walking distance. This is the proposed master plan in relation with the existing that shows the difference of character moving from mobility oriented system to accessibility oriented system. By considering all the strategies and analysis, we came up with these 22 proposals for the site. Comparing the characteristics of the proposed urban sprawl with the existing situation. The proposed figure and ground mapping shows the expanse of the urban build forms. The build forms have been moved to the fringe of the streets and densified, creating a large open space. The proposed knowledge plan shows the extent by which the urban space has been expanded and increased the available public realm. In the existing mapping, there is a non-uniform distribution of commercial, recreational, and institutional buildings, and in proposed plan, we have tried to achieve uniform distribution of these activities. In proposed mapping, building heights have been controlled around the site to maintain the original characteristics of the place. This ensures that built mass remains humane in scale and does not overpower to open spaces, but rather cohabits with it.